The last 3 days have shown that the conversation around the report submitted by the Lagos State Judicial Panel, set up to, among other issues, investigate the Lekki tollgate shooting a year ago, will not die down soon. While many youths and persons who participated in the Endsars protest last year feel vindicated by the panel's findings and are eager that the recommendations in the report are implemented soonest, there are others who are pushing back and have pointed to some inconsistencies in the report. While joining us now to tell us about his defense of the Lagos State government while the panel was in session and give us his thoughts on the report on the Lekki tollgate shooting is Abiodun Jelili Owonikoko, a senior advocate of Nigeria. Owonikoko served as counsel to the Lagos State government during the year-long sitting of the Judicial Panel of Inquiry on restitution for victims of Sars-related abuses and other matters. Good morning and welcome to the show, Mr. Owonikoko.
Good morning, Tundu. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning again.
Thank you for joining us. So let's just start off with your general overview of the report that has been made public on the Lekki tollgate massacre, as the report calls it.
Let me preface my response with a caution. I was a retained private solicitor to represent the interests of Lagos State government at the panel, along with my other colleagues, another SAN Eniton, Olukawade, and our colleagues. And I've avoided having to make comments about proceedings before the panel or their reports up until now, because I know that by law, the panel setup was a judicial panel of inquiry, and its decisions, recommendations, resolutions are not meant for public consumption in the first instance. What they do is to submit a report to the government, which may be a unanimous one or a divided opinion if the panel members were unable to agree on certain things under their terms of reference. It is government's own review of that report and its final decision on it that ought to be available for public consumption. Why is that so? Even the government's decision on it, which comes by way of white paper, is not binding on anybody that is aggrieved, and you are entitled to subject it to judicial review in a court of law. An instance that you may readily recall was the Oputa panel. One of the reasons a number of some of the recommendations did not see light of the day was that it was challenged in court, and the Supreme Court held that some of the matters that the panel looked into, much as the public was interested in knowing the truth about them, were beyond the remit of the federal government to constitute a panel to look into. So, speaking today, I'm not speaking for Lagos State government. I'm not speaking on a report that is validly published and which can be authenticated as the outcome of that judicial inquiry. Nevertheless, I can't pretend not to be aware that certain documents have been circulating in the social media and have been subject of comments and responses. I have myself seen one of those reports, one of such reports. It is unsigned, but it contains names of all members, and I did not, on going through it, see any indication that it was not a unanimous position. It may well be, however, that it's a draft of a minority opinion, because given what I know, having spent one whole year from beginning of the sitting of the panel till the end, except for occasions where one or two of my colleagues had to stand in for me, and we have record of proceedings, there was nothing that transpired before the panel that escaped my knowledge. And that being the case, I must say that I am totally shocked about what I read to be the report, particularly the finding with regards to 40-something victims, some of whom were described as deceased, some of them described as missing, but all attributed by the panel to what is called the Lekki incident. That is the undisputed, now uncontroverted fact that the military personnel got to the Lekki tollgate around past 6 p.m. in the evening as part of mobilization towards enforcing the curfew imposed by Lagos State government, following the assessment that security situation in the state was at a stage where special attention had to be given, security provided to impose a curfew and restore law and order. As at that morning, Mr. Governor had addressed the state and issued a proclamation for a curfew to commence at 4 p.m. That was preceded from what we now knew at the panel by a Security Council meeting held by the State Government Security Council the day before, involving the police, the army, the navy, the SSS, the Attorney General, the governor, and a few other government functionaries, where they assessed the threat situation and came to the conclusion then that things were going out of hand. As at that time, policemen were being killed. Oddly to a first lady was strapped, stripped naked. A female police orderly was stripped naked and assaulted at Ikorodu. On the very night that this thing, people did not know, a first-class traditional healer was lodged at Oriental Hotel. And not information of that got to hoodlums, and they were going to attempt his life. It was his own governor who called the Lagos State that my first traditional is under threat at Lekki, at Oriental Hotel close to Lekki. And I understand that, I'm sure you remember there was an attempt to burn down Oriental Hotel. If that had been allowed to happen, I'm sure we will not be talking about Lekki, we'll be talking about what led to a first-class traditional ruler visiting Lagos, being killed in a hotel. I don't want to go into other things. So my opinion here is based on my first-hand information and involvement in the proceedings. And the record that we have.
Mr. Owonikoko. We had a member of that panel come up here yesterday to confirm that the only difference between the report circulating online and what is submitted was typographical corrections. So he confirmed that that report is authentic. Secondly, so if he confirmed and he said it is unanimous, that was the decision they took, that has, nullified the argument that maybe it's a minority draft. Because we asked him specifically, he said no. He said that was the report. The only difference was typographical corrections. That was one. Number two, what are you saying, sir? What are you saying? Is it that nothing was done? Is it that people were not killed at the Lekki tollgate? Is it that the camera evidence was not removed by the LCC company? Is it that there is a justification for the mammoth loss of life? Is that what you are inferring? That people should have been killed? Yes, sir.
Okay. That's
all.
Are you done with the questions?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rufai?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, let me first of all say, I wouldn't know who the panel member that appeared before on your channel was.
The youth rep.
I think whoever
the youth rep.
is,
the youth rep of the panel. The youth rep of the panel.
Okay, good. Now, I can forgive the youth rep because I will read to you now what Section 8 of the law that set up the panel says about their report. That's the Tribunals of Inquiry Law of Lagos State, Section 15. Let me read it to you. Section 15(1). Report and order in relation to any property or matter dealt with in the report. A tribunal will make and furnish to the governor a full report in writing of his proceedings, findings and recommendations, and record an opinion and reasons leading to its conclusion. Any member of the tribunal dissenting from the conclusions or any part of it will note his reason for such dissent. Now, this provision has been interpreted as imposing a duty of confidentiality on the panel that conducts an inquiry of this nature, not to disclose the content or discuss its proceedings anywhere except to await the finding of the government on that report. I'm shocked to hear that a member had already come on air to start talking about the content. So you would then have to go to the oath of office they swore when they started their operation. The oath has to do with fidelity, it has to do with impartiality and confidentiality. If anybody who was a panel member had gone out as of today while the white paper is being awaited to speak to what has happened, that person has breached not only the oath that it took to be a member, he has also breached the duty imposed on them not to discuss or divulge the content to anybody. What we should be discussing, and it's very important, will be the government's own outcome. That outcome can be criticized. It can be challenged on the back of the original report. But it is what is actionable, it is what is justiciable, it's not whatever is contained in the report. Let me be clear. I'm not in any way trying to shut anybody out. I'm just trying to let you know what the law says. And that was why, for almost 2 months now since the panel closed, I've been invited several times to speak as a protagonist or participant at the, and I've declined to do so because I know that professionally and legally it was wrong for me to express opinion or do anything that will appear to prejudice the report. So let's not waste much time. I've just explained to you now why that would be wrong. A number of them were not lawyers. And that, to me, actually is the crux of the problem we have with this report. And I'll tell you the first thing, before I come to the other question. The questions you have posed about whether it's right to kill, definitely you know that I cannot be part of those who will justify judicial, extrajudicial killing or abuse of state power. I would never be part of that. So the answer to that one is none of them is acceptable. And from the evidence that we were able to gather at the hearing, there was not such a single thing that was established. And I'll come to that later. But let me first say this. The panel that was consulted that submitted this report are 2 reports. The mistake I have observed now that the government made was that there should have been a different panel entirely to look into the Lekki incident. The panel that was consulted originally was meant to address victims and abuse of police brutality and Sars. There was no single member of the panel who had a personal case that he wanted to establish. So there was no reason why we should be afraid that anybody there will have a preconceived notion or a settled position that they were going to be open to being persuaded by evidence-led. Now, in the course of that panel's work, this incident happened. But the incident had protagonists. It has antagonists. Unfortunately, at least 3 members of the panel were picked from those who were protagonists of the case against the police that people like us also represent. I was fully in support of what was going on. Up until 20th of October, even up until the night, until I became wiser the next morning when I did my inquiry. Those members ordinarily are not entitled to sit in this panel. But they were members of this panel, where we are trying to establish whether people were killed at Lekki tollgate, whether the Lekki tollgate concession company withdrew camera to suppress information. This is the case they have been making on their own ever before the panel sat. So, from the very beginning, that panel lacks the judicial competence to determine this issue. And I'll explain why that is so. At the point where the panel, after about 4 attempts to have the Lekki tollgate reopened, decided to reopen the Lekki tollgate. I'm sure you will recall that some members of the panel who were insisting that the Lekki must be shut down because they don't want that place to be reopened. They came out on their own and delivered what they call a dissenting opinion, asking that Lekki tollgate should be resealed after almost 4 months. And Lekki concession had to submit a claim to his insurers for a loss as in excess of 10 billion. And they couldn't do that because it has to be done faithfully without going to the site to identify what they have lost and making an inventory. These members of the panel said that they must not open that. That shows you something. That some members had a position and they were not in a position to express dispassionate, objective view on the matter that has to do with Lekki. So that is the fundamental problem we had. And after that incident, the gentleman, very respected member, for almost the entire duration of the hearing of Lekki incident, stopped coming to the tribunal. The one that issued that statement and was in the public domain. I will expect that if the report was coming from this panel, having practically on his own recused himself for almost 5 months, Lekki incident normally holds on Saturdays. Other matters are held during the days. This gentleman is always there. But when it comes to Lekki incident, he never showed up. Now, you are telling me that that gentleman is entitled to give a report that will consider objective on Lekki incident. Even actually before Lekki incident, it was even in court challenging the whole legality of imposing toll gates. any court confronted with having to review this report
so we know
is very unlikely to
about here. Which gentleman are you talking about?
Pardon?
Which man is this you're talking about?
I think the matter is in the public domain, but the only senior advocate on the panel, Mr. Oluwadugboruwa, is the gentleman I'm talking about. Somebody I respect so much. And I love his passion for rule of law. But I think a lot has happened in recent times when people needed to validate their own position. And then truth has to be sacrificed by almost everybody that has an interest in that matter. So ordinarily, I was expecting, if anything at all, that Mr. Olugboriwa was going to come up with a dissenting opinion or indicating that for this particular report, he is abstaining from signing on it. But to know now that the report was signed by all is a worrisome perspective. And I'll tell you why that is so clearly wrong. I was involved in the case of Isiaka Adeleke against the present governor of Osun State. The success of our overturning the tribunal judgment in that matter at the Supreme Court and Court of Appeal after the election was overturned by the tribunal was because one of the members of the panel that heard the matter on a crucial day when a critical evidence was being tendered was not in court. He did not sit in the panel. When the time came for judgment to be written, he wrote the judgment, and the judgment anchored on the findings of evidence led on that particular day. For that reason alone and no more, the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court set aside the judgment, and that's why Governor Yola is sitting on that seat today as a governor. How much more an impassioned panel that is going to look into a matter that is of international importance and controversy, then you have members who recuse themselves during trial, who never participate in most of the things, and then they are the one who are signing off on the outcome. People are saying that is a reliable report. Now, it's not whether it's reliable or not, it's already tainted. And I would not expect at the government that is what is sought not to be cautious in implementing that kind of report, especially with what you are now seeing that is coming out. So I've made my point on that. So if you have a panel of 9, one of them honorably withdrew at his time, a young lady from LASU. Another person who took a stand, writing their certain opinion, continued to hear and participated in giving the final report on the matter on which he has personal interest. It may not be personal, it does not be the material. Even if it's a philosophical or moral interest, it's enough to disqualify anybody from participating. I would want to know how that gentleman was able to sign off on this report as an objective and neutral report of facts that they were trying to find.
Well, he actually also said that he's going to wait and see the outcome of events, and he might publish the report if there's any attempt to stifle it. That same gentleman, as we're calling him, said that.
I'm happy to hear that. I know him that that's the kind of thing he would do. But yes, what I've explained is not about anything personal to him. But I'm just saying that technically, and in terms of what is rule of law and fair hearing, he ought not to participate in this report that has to do with Lekki incident. The other ones, he was fully involved, and I have nothing against him for that. Right. But for this report, we are for almost 15 sittings, he did not come. In fact, the most important evidence of this issue was the one by Sentinel forensic expert. That expert concern was engaged by the panel itself. On the day the expert was to testify, the reason they did not go was that they said they wanted all members to be present. And 2 people were absent. Mr. Eboadugura SAN was absent. Then DIG Lakanu, who was representative of the police, a former DIG, was also absent. They said they would need their input to understand the presentation. It was adjourned 3 times until, at least I recall, Mr. Lakanu was able to appear. I also recall that for a long part of the expert testimony, Mr. Eboadugura was not sitting at the panel.
But why are you raising...
And that is the evidence that was objective, independent.
Right, Mr. Owonikoko, why are you raising the objection now after the fact? Why not during the duration of the panel sitting? And in fact, right from the decision by the Lagos State government, whom you represent, to have the Justice Doris Okuwobi-led panel investigate 2 issues simultaneously, there was a conversation that was the wrong approach, which you have just said this morning. Why did you wait until after the report has been made public and is unfavorable to now make these objections?
No, let me say the report was not unfavorable to Lagos State government. The duty of Lagos government, the burden on them was to establish whether they were the one that deployed army to the scene. The evidence before the panel and their finding did not support such a suggestion. That was the only thing that Lagos State had to explain. So there's nothing against Lagos State. But as a citizen now, not as a lawyer to Lagos State, I'm interested in trying to clarify matters because you have invited me, and I'm telling you that if you have to subject this report to judicial scrutiny, which is subject to judicial review, these are the things that will come up. And people must not be in a haste to begin to hail a report that, as at now, is mute until we know the final outcome. Now, you are aware, I have with me, I've read the report, since you now confirmed that it's supposed to be authentic. I've identified almost 40 discrepancies, very material discrepancies in that report, including awarding damages to people who are claimed to have died, who never died, who have even come out to say they did not die, including awarding damages to somebody they claimed died, but who actually was a witness to testify as to his brother's death, not even at Lekki tollgate. Does that show you that there was a thorough job done? How do you make that kind of serious mistake to award millions and millions to somebody claiming that he died when actually he was even a witness before you? In the report itself, you find where the witness was there, and they recorded his evidence. And in the list they said he died, and they awarded him 15 million naira. What kind of report is that? Okay. That alone, any report that has that fundamental error will be quashed by any normal, a simple court of law, without even having to do anything else. Okay. It is tainted.
Mr. Jelili Owonikoko, you are the counsel to the Lagos State government. So yes, when you say that yes, you are talking as a citizen, you are not talking as a citizen in this matter. You are an interested party, because you said the same for Ebolo Onogorowa SAN. So I'm going to say the same for you too now. You are an interested party in this matter. Can I ask you this? Is it because, like,
with respect, sir,
hang on a minute. Hang on a minute,
if you
sir.
Watch the entire
hang on a minute.
I'm sorry.
Hang on a minute. Let me make my point, sir. Can I ask you, like Tundu did say?
Oh, sorry.
Is it because this report in the end was not favorable when it leaked to you, your party? That's why you're trying to discredit this report. Because what you're trying to do on air is to discredit the report and discredit the integrity of Justice Okwobi. That's what you're trying to do. And probably you are already, in counsel as regards the rebuttal of the white paper. Because these are some of the arguments we're going to see in the white paper, isn't it? If it had favored you, if that report had come out to exonerate you, would you do this?
Can I respond? Yes, I will. If you know my antecedents, find out about who I am. There is nobody in this country that cannot speak the truth to. Nobody. Oputa panel set up by Obasanjo, I wrote a whole book recommending that panel, suggested even who will be the chairman. I never claimed credit for it for the past 21 years. The Obasanjo is alive. Go and find out. Oputa panel, I have the book published where I recommend that when Abacha was still president, head of state, not only did I say there should be a committee, I suggested who should be the chairman, and I said it should be Justice Oputa. And I took that to General Obasanjo, took it to a lot of people, and that advice was taken. And I never, until today, claim credit for it. So that you should appreciate the kind of person I am. Luckily, General Obasanjo is still alive. That's out of so many things I do without making noise about it. Now, I will explain to you why I'm so concerned about this. The only witness of the military that came to testify was Brigadier Taiwo Ibrahim. He was now a general. Do you know why his case touches me so much? That guy was 1 year old when his father was killed as a governor in the 1976 coup. His father was killed along with Murtala. I was shocked to find out he still went and joined the army. After that trauma, he went to as a 1 year old. And he came to testify. He would testify as to why, by his own history, there's no way he trained all the people that were deployed on that day and brought the video of his briefing the night before. It was shown to everybody. His briefing about rule of engagement. How on no account must they engage in use of firearm without a superior authority making the order? That was in evidence. Nobody challenged him. He was not physically at the site. When he was not deployed, he trained all those people and said, and you come and start talking about military as a whole, police as a whole, as if they are not Nigerians who are there, because it doesn't support the narrative. Is that fair? I might tell you, I will not allow my child to join the Nigerian army or the police. So those who make that sacrifice, I have a duty to at least acknowledge them. In America, where there is right to own arms, bear arms, The way they revere even military and police, unless they go wrong, we don't respect our president and governor like that in Nigeria. Ordinary military police or military officer. Why is it that in Nigeria, everybody take a stand in a position that's supposed to require dispassionate, patriotic consideration? We sell ourselves abroad as if we are all criminals, animals. All institutions are degraded as if tomorrow, if there's a crisis on Awolowo Road where Arise is located, it's not the same police that you will be invited to come and protect you. And if it's beyond their power, they will not probably have other agencies to support them. Now, there was crisis in Lagos, throughout Lagos. Lekki tollgate is just one out of about 500 locations where people are protesting. But because my daughter was there, against my wife's advice, I was not in town. My daughter is saying I'm going and participating. On that very night, my daughter in England was protesting in England against the police. I spent 2 months trying to communicate that this for what I know. Until I feel the other one come to Lagos. He attended his hearing one day. That was the day the commissioner of police came to testify. And they saw what the police lost. Human lives. My daughter could not sleep for 2 days. In that report, there is no single mention of police casualties. No single mention of what they lost. The area commander of Lekki Express, he came with one of his foot cut. He cannot wear official police boot anymore. He was limping to testify. It's one of those recommended to be tried. In this report, the CDPO, Maroko, who came to testify, against whom the allegation was that he came in a jalabia and shot someone and dumped in the balloon. He came, nobody was able to establish anything again. They thought he would not come, he came. The team made a report recommending him for prosecution. So when you see a report like that, it's obvious to me that it's not a report that is good for this country. Because how do you want those agencies to feel that even after everything they have lost, this report did not, the police came and gave us inventory of what they lost. They lost billions. There was a particular woman that I recall. The son, observing the curfew on the day it was imposed, hoodlums went to, the son of a policeman, they went to the barracks, 24-year-old boy. They killed him in the presence of the mother. This mother came with a petition. She testified before the tribunal. There is no mention of that case in this report. No mention. Not a single mention of any of the police victims that came to testify and made a claim. Sir. What kind of report is that?
A lot of people are saying you are cherry picking. That's what they're saying back to you, sir. Mr. Jelili Owonikoko, they're saying you are cherry picking to enunciate your own narrative.
And those of us who have claimed. Now, please, just take that point I'm taking now. Is there anywhere in their report? I know at least about 10 police victims submitted petitions. They were listened to towards the end, and they said they will make recommendation on their matter. I've given you just an example of one woman now, an aged woman. The son was killed in her bedroom, in the police barrack. On the day coffee, the guy was observing coffee, stayed in his house. They went inside his house and killed him. He testified. Nothing was given. Now let's go what they are recommending here. There is not a single person on that list whose family or relation came to testify that the claim died. No evidence of where he died, no medical certificate, nothing. Nothing. And you expect that as a person of conscience, I will abide by that report. That's why I can't believe that.
Mr. Owonikoko, the report.
Sign off on this.
Mr. Owonikoko, the report is of a panel investigating police brutality. It was a very specific mandate. What are the terms of reference for that panel? That panel was not constituted to investigate attacks on police formations. So the panel has a very specific report, and nobody here is trying to minimize or diminish the efforts of the armed forces and security agencies in this country. I too have a history with the military, but I don't miss an opportunity to express gratitude to the military. At the same time, that does not mean sweeping egregious crimes under the carpet in the name of supporting the military. Let's have some nuance here, please. What about the evidence, forensic evidence, about the bullet casings that were found at the bridge? May I finish the question? May I finish the question? There was forensic evidence presented of bullet casings linked to the Nigerian military, nobody else, found at the Lekki tollgate. What about that? That's a fact.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm going to speak only to records. That forensic shell casing that were picked at the scene, I was there on visit Lagos State on 30th of October. I was one of those who spotted it in between some crevices. We picked them out. the panel on its own engaged a private independent consultant called Sentinel Forensics. Sent this to them without our knowledge. They gave them their report, and they brought that expert before the panel to testify. His conclusion was that this shell case, bullet casing, some of them are also consistent with the one that military uses. But there is no evidence they can see that this was a casing as a result of live fire ammunition. They also identified they used, what's the other one called? Blank bullet. But before then, General Taiwo confirmed that at a point, they actually shot live bullet into the air. In his evidence. So it's not a strange thing that we found that some shell casings, one or two were found there. If he had denied it, that would have been a different issue. You know that initially the army denied going there at all before the panel sat. But I'm happy that they came and they admitted that they, and we saw the video that was for 20 hours uninterrupted, provided by FCC on subpoena by the panel. Do you know that in that panel, till the end, FCC was not allowed to lead evidence of their own? They were not allowed to lead evidence of their own. The only evidence on record was that of the MD that was subpoenaed by the panel. The evidence of the head of service of Lagos State, which was evidence of a direct participant, except that on the very, at the hour that the thing happened, he was not there. He was part of the governor's entourage immediately after the incident happened. And he was part of the decision that was taken to impose a curfew. He went to all the medical facilities. As at that night, the next morning, only one case of death was reported. Everywhere. And the report, both by Reddington and Glanville was that...
Mr. Owonikoko, please, in all of this, you know, you have jumped to every side possible just to defend this, but you are not selling this argument to me. I'm not buying it. You are cherry picking as regards... let me land on my point, please.
As a journalist say that in this public forum.
Let me...
If you are a member of that panel today, it's obvious that there is no amount of evidence that's given that will sway your view from what you form.
Okay. So let me say this to you. Let me say this to you, sir. Let me say this to you. Why I say this is this same report you swept aside and you pushed aside that you said had no integrity. It is the same report you are now taking and now challenging, and you're not cherry picking things that are even out of the terms of reference and trying to make an emotional appeal based on your own narrative. Let us stand on the subject of the matter. What are you saying here? Are you saying that Justice Okwobi and the panelists lied in their final report? Is that what you're saying?
Am I allowed to say anything at all?
Go ahead, sir.
Am I allowed to say anything at all?
Very well, sir.
Now, the problem we have in this country is that we go based on preconception about what certain people can do. I have nothing, and throughout the proceeding, I was always the one coming to the protection of the chairman of the panel. When the impassioned litigants were drawing inferences and trying to undermine the chairman's authority. Throughout. Now, what I'm trying to let you know is this. I've made available 2 materials. I cross-examined this witness that they awarded 10 million naira to as a witness. Her evidence is available to you in the report. I'm not going outside of it. The first 2 questions she was asked was whether she had a claim before the panel. She said no. Whether she won commission, she said no. She's only here to testify for those who have cases to assist them. In the panel report, that was when they awarded her 10 million naira. They say for trauma. Do you know that there is a case of a woman, I'm not sure you are aware, of a woman before that panel that was awarded 10 million naira for gunshot injury? It came out later, the panel told us this, and it was discussed, that out of the money, about 40% of it was taken by the counsel retained, claiming that he gave part of the money to some members of the panel. The panel was scandalized when the family asked the guy, you have gone, we can't be supporting you again. He said, the NBA president asked to wait in the matter. We didn't allow this to go into the public. Now, when you now
those allegations
never gave anybody more than 10 million, even those who died. Even those who died. Now, in your report, people who are supposed to be Endsars victims at Lekki tollgate, that never testified, you awarded them 15 million naira. Are you following that? And you awarded their witness 10 million naira. Who said I have no claim before the panel? How do you expect me to read that kind of report?
So hang on a minute.
How do you expect me to read that kind of report?
Hang on a minute, Mr. Owonikoko. You have just come.
At least,
Mr. Owonikoko, please. You have just come to discredit.
People have their own position, but the judge will.
Mr. Owonikoko, please. Let me state something. Yes. You have just come to discredit this panel on air by even saying that they collected money from somebody that was awarded money. And you said you didn't allow that break in the press.
Open hearing, and I commented on it. I'm not saying it was never something for the public. It was in the open well of the panel that the chairman told us what happened. We were hearing noise at the background. And they had to come and explain this is what happened. That the president of MDA had to wade in. I'm just telling you some of the things that that the public are aware that you may not know. And so when you start expressing these views, you have to understand that a lot of other undercurrents that people already are aware. I can't come on here and make presentation that reality on ground will not support. I'm not. Every finding made by every review of evidence here, I have no complaint. It is the finding they now submitted that I'm worried about. I've just told you now, a fundamental principle of judicial ethics that you don't give somebody what he does not ask for. And that award to the witness is actually contrary to the act that set them up. Under that act, the only witness you can compensate is the one that you subpoenaed or it was summoned. Not the witness that came for people that have case before you. And you're awarding the witness 10 million naira. For coming and saying he was suffering from trauma. In that report, I'm not sure, my lord, if she sees that as part of the report, would not be shocked herself. How do you expect me to come and defend that kind of me at my level? It's a mistake that is inexplicable by error. It's more something you can explain by a deliberate attempt to serve a particular purpose, which I'm not accusing my lord for. Whoever are those who did that. I've just told you, go to court and show them this. So this is the seriousness of what we are talking about. I don't know what happened. And that's why initially I thought it was a minority report. But when you now confirm I say it's a unanimous judgment, then they are liable now at the right time. Let me say this. As of today, anybody that comments on those reports is not protected by law for libel. It's not, it was by law. Anything in that panel is not admissible in court of law. So if you rely on it to make a comment and disparage somebody, if you are sued in libel, you have no defense. By the law that set up, the evidence is not admissible in court. So please understand where I am coming from. I'm not involved in sentiment. I just told them my own daughter was there that night against my wife's, and I encouraged her to go. Because when I was her age, I was doing that. I say it's their own generational challenge. But that's all. So that tells you that I have no personal interest in this matter. I'm even not informed by the fact that I was interested by Lagos State government. I've just told you now, when I said I did what like 20-something years ago, I was not a government official, I was a private person. And I did all of that at my expense and never claimed credit. So is it a matter of this one now that I will now be using to project myself? At what age? At what time in my life? But understand the implication of what is going on. As we speak, we submitted a final address where we indicated the implication of making findings based on bias or passion. As I speak, there are 3 judgments in Canada against ex-policemen in Nigeria who are seeking asylum. And they were refused asylum by the Canadian court on the basis that they were once members of the Nigerian police force because they say their reputation is that of extrajudicial. They are judging those who by association. It's the same way this report is going to entirely demonize the entire Nigerian army. And when they are now asking for enlistment, and people of moral integrity refuse to go, people of confidence refuse to go, you'll be wondering why that is so. So this is one of the things I'm saying. Not about Lagos. Lagos has nothing to lose in this report at all. But it will already show that it's also not doing if you now go and give 50 million for somebody claimed to have died when the person is alive. So, and when you apply that to all of this, where do you come about these people that you say are dead? Up to today, no single one of those people listed, I've told you, no family member came to testify. No death certificate, no medical. In fact, that's one of the worries. How do you use that to give a report and start awarding money? You can call the report that does not say that the people did not die. But you can say, there are 3 ways when you are analyzing. You can say a matter is proved, a matter is not proven, or it is inconclusive. What the best that can happen for this tribunal was to have heard that the issue of whether people were killed or not is inconclusive. Why do I say so? The tribunal's own expert confirmed that there was nothing from all available even they analyzed to suggest that live ammunition of high velocity that the military used was actually used at Lekki on that night. That's the tribunal's own expert. We call expert from England.
And their report was entirely the same thing as what the tribunal experts said. So whose evidence is the tribunal that found himself unable to determine the matter to get again, did they rely upon to come to this conclusion? I mean, these are the things you have to look at. I have nothing to lose about it. I'm just explaining to you why the report. I've told you now, almost for some discrepancies that are very material. I've identified. I'm not going outside of it. I'm telling you from what is inside.
Right. Mr. Owonikoko, on that note, we'll leave it there. Thank you for joining us this morning.